G'day guys, welcome to the channel. We're talking about the trade period today as we get started with our off-season AFL Fantasy research. It was a pretty busy trade period, so let's have a look at all 30 plus trades that got completed during the week and a half. First up was Jack Silvani, who made his way from Carlton to St Kilda. Carlton received a currently number 19 compensation pick for that one, so an end of round one pick in return. Silvani has been a little up and down in his career so far. He's had a good stint at the Blues and yeah, probably a welcome change for him. Still 27 years old, so defender forward option in the 2025 season. And he didn't get a whole lot of games last year. He got 13 in the end and has kind of been that third man up or second ruckman option, forward option as well, obviously. And it just hasn't worked out for him at Carlton. So I think it's a welcome change, as I said. Yeah, he did spend a little bit of time as that extra ruckman option. So I don't see him doing much of that at St Kilda with Rowan Marshall and now Tom De Koning there that we'll see. So yeah, we'll see. Maybe he gets a spot down back. That'll be interesting because St Kilda defenders do pretty well. So if he does get a halfback role or something in the preseason, look out. But yeah, not the highest touted fantasy prospect for next year. Next up was James Worpel, and he was a pretty consistent performer for the most part for the Hawks since he started his career as an inside mid option. His ball use was a little bit questionable towards the end. He was trying to fend off a few too many that he probably shouldn't have, but yeah, if he can get his decision-making right, he can definitely cement his place at the Cats in that midfield, I think, behind Bailey Smith and Max Holmes. Great big three there at the Cats now, I'd say, with Danger probably on the way out. But yeah, probably a really good fit, and I see him. He was a bit up and down with his career at the Hawks, so it will be nice, I think, change for him. And I think he will prosper a lot better next year at the Cats. As you can see, still only 26 years old, or 27 start of next year. And he's been a pretty consistent performer over the years. Started in that second year there, 22 games played with 96 average, was pretty good. Last year, though, he played the 18 games, an average of 73.8, so not ideal. He was, I think, injured a bit and possibly the sub once or twice. And yeah, just didn't find that form last year more often than not, I'd say. And yeah, just a slow start to the year in general. I think possibly injured in that first round zero, if I remember correctly. So yeah, look, all the way, the only way to go is up for him next year, I think. And I reckon he could easily get back up into the 80 average at Geelong. Tom De Koning was the next one off the ranks for the trade period, and he was another one that went from Carlton to St Kilda. An interesting trade in the end with the Rowan Marshall non-trade happening, so he's going to be battling it out with Big Roma next year, and fantasy-wise, I don't really like that at all. Kind of reminds me of Grundy and Gawn a few years ago at the Demons, and that didn't really work out either, so we'll see how it goes this year with the two big men at the Saints. But before moving, Tom De Koning was the number one man at the Blues with the backup Mark Pittonet. And whenever Pittonet wasn't playing, De Koning was thriving. He was doing really, really well. So if he's given the number one ruck role, he just smashes it usually. And we saw that at the end of last year, or bit last year, and a little bit this year, but we did see a lot more Mark Pittonet at Carlton this year, I think. So in those games, especially in the second half of the season, you can see there's definitely a big drop-off from the first half. So just serves to show that Tom De Koning, when sharing the ruck duties, is a little bit of a miss, and I'm not putting my eggs in the Tom De Koning basket just yet. Next up was another big man in Sammy Draper, heading from the Bombers to Brisbane. And with big Oscar McInerney retiring just after the grand final, this seems like a match made in heaven for him. You've still got Darcy Fort up at Brisbane, but I reckon Yeah, he's 32 or something. He's kicking on. So Sammy Draper is the next best thing, ruckman-wise, at Brisbane, I reckon. And hopefully he can take his chances with both hands. Was at Essendon for the whole of the start of his career when he was picked round one, pick one in the rookie draft in 2016. And since then, like, he's always been touted as this next big thing, but Essendon just never got the best out of him. And like, he was really good in the ruck, but just other parts of the ground, he was probably lacking a little bit. But there's always that hype, and there's still that hype, I think, because he's still only 27, and that's kind of prime ruck breakout territory. So a new club after struggling at the Bombers, who have always been a really poor ruck team. I don't think I've ever seen a decent Essendon ruckman since I've started watching footy. So I was hoping he'd break the mold there, but no, I think he'll have to go and pick up Big O's scraps next year, I think. And hopefully we can see him do a little bit of this early season stuff from last year. Is getting closer to the triple digits. And if he's sharing it with Darcy Fort, we'll see. But if he's number one ruck, look out for Sammy Draper, I reckon. A quick trade here with Jacob Ware heading from GWS to Port Adelaide. Probably another good move for him with the stacked Giants lineup, I reckon. He's 27 years old, so he's definitely had a bit of experience behind his belt, and he's been drafted twice, in both by the GWS Giants, interestingly, and only played the 4 seasons so far, or been part of the team, I guess, but only played games since 2022. So an interesting prospect. He did have some flashes in the pan, I think, of, a 97 in there. That's not bad. And I think he was getting that little bit of a inside mid-roll at some point there. But interesting to see him go to the power with Rosie, Horne-Francis, Butters, all the big midfielders. Hopefully he can learn something there, or pick up the scraps a bit, but I don't know, maybe not the best fantasy prospect for next year. Next up was Charlie Spargo heading from the Demons to North Melbourne, and I reckon this is a bit of a big fish in a small pond kind of mentality here. I reckon, yeah, he could probably give a good forward presence at North Melbourne because that is sorely needed. He was at the Demons for the past 8 years, and I remember him being he was in the best 22 week in and week out back in 2021, 2022. And he just hasn't got the game since. And I don't know if he was really that fantasy relevant, maybe on the odd week with a good matchup. But we'll see how he goes at North Melbourne. Not the best forward scoring team, so could be another miss for Charlie Spargo at the Kangaroos. An interesting one here with Liam Reedy heading over from the Dockers to Carlton, especially with Tom de Koning, as we mentioned, leaving the Blues. Liam Reedy is a ruckman in waiting. I think he's been waiting for a while at Fremantle behind Sean Darcy and now Luke Jackson. So there wasn't really a whole lot of chance of him breaking in there. And I'm not sure, he might even be older than the two of them too. But yeah, so he's gone to Carlton now, and with the gap with Tom de Koning, could be a little diamond in the rough for next year, potentially. Yeah, so he's still only 25 years old, so not as old as I thought he was, so that's heaps of time to go on his career. And he's only played 3 games so far in his entire career, and yeah, again, back up to Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson, you're not going to get a great crack at it. And yeah, the only game this year was a 37. So not much on paper, but prospect, what could he be with the opportunities at Carlton? That's pretty interesting. And we'll have to wait and see how the preseason heads out. But an interesting trade for Carlton. Let's see what they make of him. Next up, we had Malcolm Rosas Jr. heading to the Swans from the Suns. So just heading down the road on the East Coast. He wasn't really best 22 player, I don't think, for the last couple of years. I think he's really only played a handful of games, so not really a huge fantasy prospect. Yeah, so it's still 24 years old, but he played a few games in 2022, 2023. Not the highest average, it was really that extra small forward option and, yeah, flash in the pan for some flashy goals, I'd imagine, but not huge on the fantasy side of things. So another probably miss fantasy-wise there. Next up, we saw Brandon Starcevich head over to the Eagles in what was deemed one of the mega trades of the trade period, which is a whole flurry of picks and one player there, and it was Brandon Starcevich. He was a premiership player at the Lions the last couple of years, and that could be an interesting get for the Eagles in my mind. Not sure about fantasy prospect-wise, but definitely defensive-wise, taking over that Shannon Hearn, Jeremy McGovern role potentially down back. But as I said, fantasy-wise, he has never really been a huge hitter in the fantasy game. He's more of the key defender, spoiling the ball a lot, keeping the key forwards at bay. So not really getting his hands on it a whole lot. And yeah, you can see there, not really the highest stats ever. 2022 was his best year, but still only a 64.7. So not really a fantasy relevant one, but definitely a big improvement for the Eagles backline. Speaking of defenders, Judd McVie made his way to the Dockers from the Demons, and that is going to be an interesting one for them. I think he's very keen to learn off Jordan Clark and Luke Ryan, sorry, not Liam. And yeah, they have been pretty great fantasy defenders over the years, have Clark and Ryan. So not a bad move for him. And he's a defender in waiting for some responsibility, I think. He's keen to get on the field and make his mark. He's still only 22 years old and he's got 65 games in him already, which is pretty crazy. He played 23 games in 2023 and 24. And then 17 games this year when he missed the start of the season there. And he did pretty well for the first few rounds. He was pretty hyped, I remember. So someone that I think people see a lot of potential in. So get in before the secret's out, I'd say. Because he did have a little flash in the pan there and has not the worst average for a second and third year player, and could be one that a new club could bring some prosperous numbers for us there. So Judd McVie, interesting one for Fremantle next year. A super interesting one fantasy-wise is Sam Flanders heading from the Suns to the Saints. He had an unreal season last year for the Suns and then had one of the most incredible falls from grace in 2025 where I think he dropped his average by 40 points or something like that, which is just like you would have hated to have drafted Sam Flanders last year. So he's off to the Saints and could be interesting if he gets a midfield role with Steele now off to the Demons, which we'll get to. But also he was known for being that half-back flank defender who everyone wanted the ball in their hands of, distributing out of the back line. So yeah, an interesting one there. He's definitely a high-touted player over the years. 24 years old still, 89 games in him. As you can see there, 2024, an unreal season of 107.8. And then this year just gone 68.3. So just under a 40-point drop off in average last year. And you've got to think that was to do with Dimmer Hardwick coming in as the Suns coach and just a different game plan with Rioli and Noble taking that halfback position off Flanders this year. So they chucked him forward, they chucked him in the middle. I saw him on the TV a lot, but he wasn't getting a lot of the balls. So a welcome change for him, and we'll see what Ross Lyon has in store for him. But if he can get back to 100, anywhere near 100 average, I'd say is a big win for Sam Flanders and a big win for fantasy coaches next year. Hopefully he can get back to his best. Oscar Allen joined Brisbane from West Coast, and I'm sure Eagles fans were pretty devastated by that, I think, because he was their captain and it was pretty well known for a while. So yeah, finally cut the cord and he's off to Brisbane, and it's at a time where full forwards at Brisbane are doing really, really well, and some of them have only been in the system for a couple of years. So Oscar Allen is going to bring a whole lot of experience there next year, which is pretty exciting. Still only 26, 27 at the start of next year. He's had a pretty shit run with injuries, I think. He missed half of this season, half of last season there. But 2023 was probably where we saw the best of Oscar Allen. He was very, very prominent in the forward line at the Eagles because I think he was really the only option there at the time. But definitely has that experience, has the capability, has that leadership quality to him. And it could be a sneaky F5 next year for your teams, or maybe with the Brisbane midfielders pumping in inside 50s all game, we could see him have his best years ahead of him, potentially. Heath Shaw landed at St Kilda for a 4th round pick in 2027, so pretty cheap to get over there. And he's going to be learning from the best in the business in the other Max, the Gawn variety. So yeah, he's going to be learning off the best in the business, and there's not really any other competition for spots after that, I feel, at the Demons. Max Gawn is 34, I think, 35 almost. So he is very, very close to wrapping it up. And if he can get a couple of years into teaching Max Heath how to do his thing, that could be a pretty exciting get for the Demons. Still only 22 years old, so 13 years or 12 years Gawn's junior. And he's only played the 4 games so far, and all of them were at the back end of this season. So I thought it was last season. And he ended up with a measly 9 there to really snub down that average a bit more. But yeah, a prospect that has been pretty untried so far, learning off the best in the game. So I'd have to say that's pretty exciting, but it's still on the young side. We'll have to wait and see when he can pop. Hopefully Demons can sync it up when Gawn leaves. Max Heath is on the up. St Kilda were very, very busy this trade period, and they brought in Liam Ryan from West Coast Eagles for a 2026 second round pick. Ryan's been a pretty well-known small forward for the Eagles ever since he was part of that premiership squad a fair few years ago now. So he's looking for a rejuvenation as well, and we'll see how that goes at St Kilda next year. It's going to look very, very different come round 1. Ryan is still 29 years old, so he's got a few good years left in him, and he'll bring that experience to St Kilda that they probably need in their forward line. Fantasy-wise, not the most relevant there with, 50s in general, so probably not one to be drafted next year, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe a new club could be exactly what Liam Ryan needs. Brody Myercheck became a Demon, and I think this one's pretty interesting because Demons don't have many full forwards, and he could be the main man for them next year. He was very, very good for the Pies over the years. Whenever I saw the Pies playing, it was pretty like 50-50 chance you'd get Myercheck on the end of a inside 50 kick. It's just, really good at taking a mark, I always thought, Myercheck. Fantasy-wise, he is 33 at the start of next year. I did not realize Brody Myercheck was that old. But he has been pretty consistent over the years as well, games-wise, apart from a couple of niggles in 2024. But fantasy-wise, not the best, I guess. Still got that low 60 to 50 average post-COVID, so nothing that really stands off the paper. But an interesting one. I could probably see him being one of the only full forwards getting any of the ball next year for the Demons. Campbell Chesser made his way from the Eagles over to the Blues, and he was a highly touted draft pick from a few years ago now that I think everyone thought was going to do a bit better than what he did. So he gets a fresh start as well. And he is still only 22, maybe 23 come the start of next season. So he's got plenty left to give in his career. He's got a good 10 plus years ahead of him. And he has had some games into him so far. He's had a total of 36 games, and most of them coming the last 2 years and only playing the 4 this year. As we see down here, played all 4 of his games in the final 4 games of the season and didn't go too badly. Actually showed some promise for the future. So maybe Carlton's seen something here that is excited them because, he was pick 14 in the 2021 draft. So pretty high draft pick and obviously has some potential. So we'll have to see what Michael Voss does with him next year. It's a pretty stacked midfield there with obviously Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt. You've got Jagger Smith coming back into the mix. You've got the Camporelli brothers. Yeah, there's a lot happening in the midfield at Carlton. So we'll wait and see if he even gets a game. But if he does, who knows? In one of the only trades of the period to involve two players, Ben Ainsworth found his way to Carlton and Corey Durden found his way to Port Adelaide, and the Suns received some picks in there. Probably going to help out with their Zeke Ewland and Dylan Patterson picks in the draft coming up. But yeah, Ben Ainsworth and Corey Durden found their way to new clubs. So Ben Ainsworth, I'd say, is probably the more fantasy relevant player there. Ben Ainsworth, still only 28 at the start of next season, and he did have a couple of good years after COVID. In 2022, 2023, he was averaging in the 70s, and then 24, 25 has really just dropped off a lot. And I'd probably put that down to, this year in particular, the huge shift with Dimmer Hardwick becoming coach and a huge influx of draft picks and tradies. And now Christian Petrarca's gone. Jamara Ugle-Hagan was planning to go there. So I think Ben Ainsworth was like, yeah, I need to rejuvenate somewhere else. So good choice for him to get to Carlton. I think he's going to get some games there, probably take over the roles of Sincotta or any of those fringe Carlton players. I think Ben Ainsworth walks into the Carlton lineup from the Suns. And Corey Durden is still young. He was taken as a second or third round pick in 2020, which is, if I remember, one of the weaker drafts in recent history. But yeah, still young and obviously hadn't had the best opportunities at the Blues. Not super fantasy relevant. I mean, how can you be with such a stacked midfield? And it wasn't really getting a whole lot of time on the field, I don't think, especially in recent years. So good change for him. Port Adelaide, see what you can do with Corey Durden. Tyler Young found his way to the West Coast Eagles, and that's an interesting one because probably going from a key defender at a rebuilding team to a key defender at another rebuilding team. We'll see if he can make a place there. Don't think he's very fantasy relevant though. He's had 3 seasons where he's actually played games at the Tigers, and this season was much better than the last 2. And he did play games right at the butt end of the year there from rounds 18 to 24, and saw him at least getting amongst it for the first time ever. So interesting one there. Could he potentially take over that Jeremy McGovern role for next year with Brendan Starcevic, or something happen there? Who knows? Bit of a wild card, but yeah, maybe keep an eye on him over the preseason. Will Brodie found his way to Port Adelaide from Fremantle as his 3rd club now. And was it Fremantle received pick 103 as compensation for that. So not sure when that will actually go in the draft or if they'll even use it. But Will Brodie is an interesting one. He played at the Suns to start his career and has spent the last few years at Fremantle. That first year he was there in 2022. Look at that. 2022, 22 games played at an average of 95.4. So the guy has potential. He just never gets the opportunity. He was playing in Peel Thunder, the Fremantle State League, and he was dominating with Neil Erasmus, I think. And dominating that and never being able to crack into the best 22 at AFL level. So interesting to see what the new coach at Port Adelaide has in store for him. New game plan in the works there with a new coach. I've forgotten their name right now. Carr, I think. Can't remember. But yes, interesting for Will Brodie. Has that pedigree to his fantasy game there. 50 with a 95.4 average a few years ago. 27 years old, so could he be in for a rejuvenation at Port Adelaide? Who knows? Braden Fiorini made his way to the Bombers, and he got there for a little third-round pick in the 2026 draft. An interesting one because the Bombers are definitely in rebuild mode or some kind of mode, and I think they need some experience, some kind of person that's had experience at the level just to help the young guns in the team get their footing. And this could be the trade that does it. Fiorini is pretty experienced. He's had a lot of games at AFL level and was notoriously the sub for a lot of years under the Stewie Dew era. But recently, I imagine, with again, another one with Dimmer Hardwick coaching now at the Suns, a one-to-way that saw little hope for his career to progress at the Suns. So possibly a shining light at the Bombers next year with no Dylan Shield, Zach Merritt. Who knows what's going to happen with Merritt next year? Does Fiorini get a bit more mid-time there and a bit more on-field time? There is no more sub rule, which could also benefit Fiorini a lot because he was the sub a lot. And if he gets on the ground, he actually racks it up. As we can see from a couple of these numbers on the right here, Braden Fiorini, only 28 still, so a couple of years left in him, and as you can see, didn't get the games was the issue here. He didn't get many consistent games. But if you look at the right column, first season, those first two games he played, I think the first game he played, he got 140 or something. It was unreal. And it was all downhill from there, unfortunately. But he does have that pedigree about him, and he can rack it up. So an interesting one at the Bombers next year. As you see, had a very good end to the season as well. Like, look at that. If you take out those first 4 games, which he didn't start till round 9, and then he came back after the bye, and it looks like he averaged that. I'll have to tally that up, but that looks like he was averaging close to 100 after the bye, which is pretty scary. Connor Buderick is another Suns want-away that found a new home. He made his way to the Western Bulldogs. Not one to light up the fantasy world, mainly because he hadn't had the games to put it out there, but a utility, apparently. I always thought he was a key defender for some reason. He's a small defender, so maybe he has that run and carry that I just haven't seen yet. He was touted to have a bit of fantasy game earlier this year or last year. People thought he might have been the one to benefit down back from distributing the ball, but didn't come to be. So maybe with a change at the Dogs, with Liam Jones leaving and couple of rotations down back there, maybe he finds his way into the starting 22 or 23 come round 1 next year. One to watch in the off-season, and who knows what will happen with Luke Beveridge at the helm. Ollie Florent found his way to the Blues from the Swans, and this had nothing to do with the Charlie Curnow trade in the end. The Swans got a third-round 2026 pick, and not much more from that one. So interesting decision there. I'm not sure if he was keen to leave the Swans. I thought he was doing pretty well there as a wingman, and he had a couple of good years recently. He was getting games, a very consistent performer. So with Carlton changing it up a bit, we could see him on the wing for the Blues next year. Whether that racks up some fantasy numbers, we'll have to wait and see. If he gets the halfback role as well, could be a speedy option down back with Adam Sard and Nick Newman coming back. So could be an interesting one there. Still only 27, and as I said before, really consistent over the years. Didn't really miss a game until this year. And let's see what happened there. So he did struggle a bit this year. Had his lowest average since his first year this year. So a real drop off. So definitely one that could come back to some kind of form next year. You can see before that, he was getting up to a 76 average last year. So he's quite relevant. And maybe he can get back to that again at the Blues. We'll have to wait and see. One of my boys, Chenkuth Giath, made his way to the Demons in the offseason. I reckon he's going to look damn good in the Demons kit, though. And he was a speedy option for us down back. Good defender and a wingman. I thought he did a bit better on the wing than he did as the defensive spoiling option. But yeah, another one that really didn't get the games into him consistently. Is a bit of a fan favorite, and he had the great aura at the club, hands down. But I think he's just seeking better opportunities for next year, and I think he'll get them at the Demons. Could be a bit of experience just to help out in the back line. Because, yeah, I do remember him having some stellar games this year. See, in the middle there, 113, 107. Someone probably picked him up right there at their free agency, and then next week, bam, 34. Not great stuff. So inconsistencies were an issue for him, and we'll have to wait and see what the Demons can do with Chenkuth Giath. Another Hawk want away in Jai Sarong made his way to the Swans in the off-season. It wasn't too tried at AFL level by the Hawks, did play a bit of VFL in the end, and I think he was a handy, speedy defender in the halfback, but again, just didn't get the game time at AFL level. As you see, he's played a total of 10 games over the last 3 years, and yeah, nothing really standing off the page there, fantasy-wise. All the best to him at the Swans. It could be a handy option down back or on the wing if he does get the games. Another one, we'll just have to wait and see. Finbar Malay made his way to the Crows from North Melbourne, and he played not much at AFL level, but I did see him play once or twice this year, and I just think he was like a cult hero during the games. People were really excited by this guy for flying for some of the marks. So yeah, it could be a handy option to fill the gap for Tex Walker and work with Riley Thilthorpe and Darcy Fogarty. Only played the 7 games total in his career so far, and nothing too flashy there fantasy-wise. 22 years old though, and 197 centimeters. Could even get some ruck time potentially at the Crows. We'll see, but yeah, not really a huge one with fantasy relevance. Jamara Ugelhagen made his way to the Gold Coast for the 4th round selection this year from the Western Bulldogs. They received that, and I think that was about time for him. I think Doggies fans were pretty done at this point with all the off the field stuff that was happening, and yeah, he's off to the Suns for hopefully a fresh start, and hopefully we will see him on the field next year playing in the Suns colours. And if he does, maybe he has a little bit of relevance as a F4, F5 option, if that is a huge if he can get back to any kind of form. He's a former number 1 draft pick who hasn't played a game now in over a year, but if they can get him on the field, if they can get his body right, maybe we'll see Jamara get back to being a sneaky free agency option. Jack Buller then made his way to Collingwood from Sydney. He was a mid-season draftee, I believe, and pretty highly touted full forward from his days playing in Western Australia. He had played 10 games in total over his 3 seasons at the club. I think he didn't play a game in 2024. Did play some games this year though, right at the end, and so a little bit of experience into him. We'll have to wait and see. I think his VFL or state league level numbers were pretty good, and if he can translate that finally to AFL level, maybe with Brody Myercheck leaving, he might have a bit more of a say in it. But yeah, could be one that comes good in a few more years. Patrick Rechko is a untried Cats midfielder who made his way to the Tigers this offseason. He was picked up in last year's draft, I think. And yeah, as I said, untried, didn't play a game. I guess he just wanted to go be a big fish in a small pond because the Cats probably didn't need him in the future. So fair enough. Off you go, Patrick. Enjoy your time at Richmond. Hopefully all the best to you, and you can stamp yourself into the AFL there instead of at the big cattery. Alrighty, here we go with some big ones that finished off the trade period. Christian Petrarca became a Gold Coast Sun, and this could be one of the biggest trades from this year's trade period. He has been an unreal enigma for the last few years. Obviously getting the premiership with the Demons a few years ago with Gawn and Oliver, and being insanely fantasy relevant. 29 years old, almost 30, and just look at those numbers on the right there. From 2021, let's go back to 2020 in COVID times, because that was an adjusted year. That is a 100 plus average in 2020 because it was reduced quarters. So that averages out to about, got 110 average right there, I think, or just under. So he was averaging triple digits for 4 years straight until 2024 had that freak accident on field and ended up missing half the season. And this year was a little bit off as well by spending a bit more time in the forward line and maybe not getting amongst it quite as much. A little bit deflated on the side, a little bit of off-field tendencies happening there. So I think a welcome change for him at the Suns. I think he's going to be welcome with open arms, and he's going to make a freakish midfield for the Suns now. So Matty Rowell, Noah Anderson, Tuke Miller, Christian Petrarca, all these other kids coming in. The Suns are looking good for the future. And if Petrarca can get amongst it it just feels like a better mantra, and they're much closer to a premiership, obviously, the Suns are, than the Demons these days. So if they can all pull it together and pull Track back up with them, I'm all for it. I reckon Track can get close to that 100 average again. And yeah, if not, it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be awesome in the Suns colours next year. I'm really excited to see what he pulls out at the Suns. Jack Steele landed at the Demons, taking the place of Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver, which we'll get to. But Steele has been amazing in the middle for his whole career. He's really been a pig of the game, I feel. Has a bit of a downtime at points, and as evident from the year he just had, where he really didn't pop off the page like he used to. So a welcome change for him as well, I think, where I think the Demons needed him, because until they picked him up with all this Petrarca and Oliver news of them leaving, I was wondering who is going to be in the midfield next year. It was just going to be Jack Viney and Harvey Langford, and that's it. So thank God he's there, and that's amazing for fantasy coaches, I think, for him to start anew again at a new club where they really need that midfield extractor like him, with a new coach, and again, just a fresh start all round for everyone. It could be a match made in heaven. His fantasy numbers have been unreal as well. If you look back at 2021 here, he was the highest fantasy scorer next to Tuke Miller that year, I believe, and followed it up the next couple of years with 110, and dropped off a little bit in the last few years, but maybe that's why this change has happened. Hopefully he can get back to that unreal force of nature that he was. You can see down here, had some real stinkers towards the end of the year as well. 25 in there, 46. A tackling machine, Jack Steele. I love how he tackles. He very often gets close to 10 tackles a game, where he gets most of his output fantasy-wise. So as the main man in the middle at the Ds, I'm hoping Jack Steele can really get back to that awesome form from a few years ago. Oh boy, Clayton Oliver is off to the Giants from the Demons, and we all saw it coming, but did we see it coming for a third round pick? That is pennies for your premiership winner, your All-Australian Blazer winner, a guy that revolutionized the Demons midfield for a good 5-6 years there. Obviously has had his bad times off the field in recent years, and whether that's a whole other video, but is him going to GWS going to rejuvenate him? I think we're all kind of fingers crossed hoping, because that form a few years ago was unreal. And here is that form from his second year onwards. He was averaging 100 plus from 2017, 18, 19, 2020. That is still 100 plus average. 2021, 2022, 2023, all averaging over 101 was the lowest in that time. And the second lowest was 105. With unreal games played, 2023 he only dropped off a bit, but other than that, he was consistent as hell. And he got back to that consistency of games being played this year, and he brought it back just that little bit. So he looked pretty happy on that boat with Giants coaches and players the other day. So I'm hoping he gets his head right, and I'm hoping we can get back to some serious numbers with Clayton Oliver. Could be on the cards, hopefully. Just hoping. And finally, the last trade to go through this trade period was Charlie Curnow ending up as a Sydney Swan, and Will Hayward also heading to Carlton the other way. So interesting couple of forwards swapping places for a couple of nitty-gritty draft picks there. But the big story was Charlie Curnow. He is going to be hopefully another one. Like, I know I say this about half the players, but a refreshing start for him. He clearly needed it, I think, after the last couple of years. And with Sydney and their midfielders pumping in inside 50s all year, I can see him getting on the end of like half of the inside 50s from the Swans next year. I reckon it's going to be a match made in heaven. And a few years ago, he was right up there. I think he was like, okay, it wasn't a great year for forwards. Forwards have been pretty dismal the last few years. So an average of 86 was still getting you like a top 10 forward the last couple of years. So he's dropped off a little bit since then with niggles and form slumps and, I don't know, Carlton maybe, he just wasn't feeling it anymore, perhaps. But all signs seem like he's keen for Sydney. He's excited. And I think it's just a vibe in Sydney right now. I reckon they're really excited to see what he can do next year. And can he get back to that 2023 form where he was plucking marks for fun and kicking goals for fun? I think he was the Coleman medalist that year. So get close to that again, Charlie. That would be nice. Give us some more forward options for 2026. So that is the AFL trade period wrapped up from a fantasy perspective. A couple of good changes there on the cards for 2026. A couple of trades that didn't go through in the Rowan Marshall trade, not getting to Geelong. Was it Buku Kamas not getting to the Blues? And the big one there with Zach Merritt didn't make it to his favorite club, the Hawks, but oh well, maybe we'll see you next year, Zach. But keep pumping out those numbers. I don't want to see a drop off from him next year. I would love to see Zach Merritt trying his hardest to get to the Hawks next year. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Please stay tuned for more AFL fantasy content this off-season. I plan on doing some player videos, real breakdown videos on players. And the draft is coming up as well. Keep an eye out for some content on some of the draftees coming through the ranks. So until next time, see you in the next video.